Welcome, everyone. I'm Pat Montour, your host, and this is On Your Honor, Straight Talk. We ride for those who died, sponsored by the Police Unity Tour. Today's show is going to be very exciting, but it's going to bring you to a point of understanding of what sacrifice, honor, tribute, and remembrance truly is. On today's show, our guests are from the National Concerns of Police Survivors and the New Jersey chapter of C.O.P.S, Garden State Survivors. So important to law enforcement families to remember the sacrifices of law enforcement. The loss of an officer, to their family, what happens when the ceremonies stop and everyone goes home. How do we keep them safe in the future? What goes on in the life or the day in the life of those who are back at the local departments? The two organizations, as I would say, the greatest asset and heroes to us all, make sure that we as law enforcement officers and our families know that someone is there when we sacrifice ourselves on the streets for our citizens, and maybe that day comes when we don't come home. There are people like the ones that we're going to have in our audience here today that help make sure you heal, you understand those sacrifices, and that your loved one's memory will never be forgotten. The show and this content is important for us all, not only for law enforcement, but for our citizens to understand the importance of who a law enforcement officer is, but who also serves with that law enforcement officer. The family, the children, relatives, their fellow officers back at their agencies. What happens in the light or the day of when that serious issue comes along and you lose a brother or sister officer? The content of this show is to educate you on the heroic actions of law enforcement, but not just so much as you would see on TV that everything has to be in 48 minutes, a case is solved. It shows you, or we hope to show you, that this is a forever feeling. You are not just picked for this or selected by something. You are chosen by hopefully, a draw to this particular profession. We want to be able to talk about wellness and safety care for our officers, bringing you the best guests that we could possibly bring you on this show, but not only just saying that they work for a local agency or an organization and they bring something to you. I want to later on be able to read the background of what these individuals provide us all. They sacrifice themselves to make sure that your memories and our memories and law enforcement memories are always in the forefront. And that in Washington, D.C., where we have the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Wall, which we as the Police Unity Tour continue to make sure that we keep pristine for those survivors and more than 23,000 names that are inscribed on those walls. And just most recently, this April, you'll be seeing more names being inscribed on it. And as we move towards traditions, and the Police Unity Tour has many, but one of the ones that I feel is the most important, as we will be talking to our guests about some of the details of what occurs during in-the-line-of-duty deaths. But our honor roll, to teach our officers, whether they are brand new, just coming on the job, or they're the most senior, that this job is serious and you can lose your life. And when people do, we should know how and why, so we can maintain a better understanding of education to provide each of you, the officers, how to stay alive. And God forbid, when you pay the ultimate sacrifice, who takes care of your family? With that being said, I would like to go to our office and talk to our retired chief, Eric Heller, who is our technical communications manager at the Police Unity Tour, and he's going to give you the honor roll, the understanding of all our active law enforcement officers that have died in the line of duty and therefore have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Please do the honor, Eric, and present the list of the officers and the reasons and cause of why they passed.
Absolutely, Pat. Thanks for having me again. It's great to keep this tradition going. We do it at every meeting, every national meeting, every chapter meeting, just so that we all keep an understanding of where we are at with law enforcement deaths. So what we do is we take statistics from last year, compare them to this year to date. So from January 1 to date, we look at this year versus last year. So last year in 2022, there were 18 firearms-related incidents. In 2023 to date, there's 9, which is a good 50% decrease. Traffic-related incidents in 2022, there were 21. And in 2023, there are only 5. And I say only, it's 5 is way too much, but that's another decrease of 76%. Other reasons, and that could be medical, that could be, in the past it had been COVID, it could be heart related, it could be any type of other reason. It's a very broad category, but last year there were 73, and this year there are 8, which is another great decrease, an 89% decrease. So the total deaths in 2022 to date were 112, and in 2023 we were at 22. This is an overall decrease of 80%. Obviously we would like this all to be zeros, and we know realistically that probably is not going to ever happen, but having an 80% overall decrease is outstanding, actually, and hopefully we continue that decrease throughout the year. So that's our tradition, and that's what we do. And unfortunately, there's going to be another over 500 names being added to the wall this year, to the over 23,000. But the 80% decrease is a great showing so far for this year.
Yeah, Eric, like we've been saying, on most of our shows, that, the uniqueness about the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial is that it's a living memorial, and it continues to grow each and every year. And as you just said, giving the numbers, sadly, that there's going to be numbers again next year. And that's just, based on statistical analysis. Over every year we lose officers, unfortunately. But it's a living memorial and very unique, and that's why it's so important for a lot of the people we serve around the world, not just in our country, even the other countries that participate with the Police Unity Tour, understand that people are giving their lives up for your safety and your honor. And that is, I mean, the most unbelievable thing someone can give to you. Give you their loyalty that they will protect you, and they would give their life instead of you losing yours, which is amazing. That brings me to our next part of what we're trying to talk about. And Eric, thank you. It's always an honor to have you on the show. You bring a great deal of information and do a lot for the organization. I know you're really swamped, and the Unity Tour is around the corner. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for always being on here and giving us the statistics on our honor roll. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our honor. And as we move to our honored guests, and we'll be talking a little bit more about them in a moment, we're going to be going to a video that is about our Candlelight Vigil, which opens up Police Week festivities in Washington, D.C. every May. Under congressional law, it was the May 13th was put as the day for Law Enforcement Candlelight Vigil, as well as May 15th as Peace Officers Day. Our two guests in the studio, as we earlier were talking about, is the Honorable Dianne Bernhard. She's the Executive Director of National C.O.P.S. And also here with us today is the Honorable John Ciuppa. He's a survivor, past president of the Garden State Survivors. He's a national board member for the Police Unity Tour, as well as many other hats that he's worn to make sure that the memory of all fallen officers are not forgotten. We have two really heroic people for you all here today. They will give you insights on what they do and provide us all, I will tell you, champions for law enforcement, but those are for our families. Let's go to the break, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you in a few moments, and we'll be right back. Thank you.
one.
Welcome back, everyone. And like I said, we have an amazing guest here today, one in studio, one out of studio. I would like to introduce now formally the National Executive Director of Concerns of Police Survivors, Dianne Bernhard. Dianne brings a great deal of background to this position and to the organization. And I'm going to read something to make you all be aware of what kind of heroes you have in the studio here today. Dianne Bernhard is an Executive Director of Concerns of Police Survivors, C.O.P.S, as it's lovingly known, a national nonprofit organization that supports the families and co-workers of our nation's fallen law enforcement officers. Founded on the concept of peer support, C.O.P.S and its 55 chapters across the nations provide services to over 67,000 members. Do you hear that? I don't hear that on the news. C.O.P.S services includes responding to assistance agencies and families directly following a line of duty death, training law enforcement on how to respond to trauma and tragedy, providing scholarships to surviving children and spouses and organizations, and organizing the survivor experience at the National Police Week, which you just previously saw a video of, providing survivor grief retreats, and so on and so forth. Prior to assuming her role as C.O.P.S, Mrs. Bernhard retired from Columbia, Missouri Police Department after 23 years of service. She worked through the ranks of the organization, ultimately retiring as their deputy chief. See the quality of people that are in here? Of police. Mrs. Bernhard learned about C.O.P.S through the death of a co-worker and a friend, Officer Molly Thompson Bowden, who was shot and killed in 2005. When Ms. Bernhard retired from law enforcement in 2014, she wanted to give back to the organization that did so much for Molly's family, so she came to work as the C.O.P.S Executive Director. Wow. Welcome, Dianne, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And to our second guest, who I might add is also a personal friend. I know both of these individuals for God knows how many years. I failed to also say, Dianne, you're also a member of the Board of Directors on the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial for many, many years, and plays an impactful role on how and what goes on during Police Week, and assists in many other assets of the operation and running of the memorial. And I would be remiss not to say how much volunteerism goes into making sure she flies in and out of Washington, D.C. And where are you at right now, Dianne, if I may, before I introduce John?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm actually in New Orleans right now. I apologize for having the hotel room as my background right now, but we're hosting a training for law enforcement on responding to line of duty death. So yeah, we're here from Louisiana right now.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you being here. And this is going to be two parts, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to see more on this in Police Week in May. But as we get to our second guest, Honorable John Ciuppa, as I said earlier, he's a past president of New Jersey C.O.P.S. He's on the national board for the Police Unity Tour. He has served in many capacities to make sure his life as a survivor, a club that he did not want to be a part of, but unfortunately was forced into, and doing so, John has been able to maintain and do many things for all of us. And let me read some of the background on John. As I said, he's the immediate past president of the Garden State Survivors and vice president of the Police Unity Tour Chapter 1, as well as sitting on our national board. Some professional highlights of John's life: vice principal for Passaic Board of Education, Passaic High School, middle school, and various elementary schools. He started teaching in 1978 and became an administrator in 1989 and worked there for 42 years and has made a difference not only in law enforcement lives but in young children and young adults' lives. He carries 2 bachelor's degrees and 2 master's degrees. And this is what I've been telling you. People need to realize the type of people that are out there that are advocating for you all. He has been a member of the Unity Tour for over 25 years. He has been a member of C.O.P.S since the beginning of the chapter. Attended the first reading, the names reading, at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial on October 15th, 1991 with his mom. It was 24-hour reading, as we all know that were there, but for most of you it took 12,500 plus names to be read over a 24-hour period, which was an emotional but unbelievable, beautiful sight to see. His dad is on that wall. That's why he's a survivor. 27 West, line 17 means the most to him and his family. You're going to learn more about that as we speak to both Dianne and John about what impacts them both, what has brought them to this place at this time, why they give themselves so much to all of you, and please take advantage and assist as you hear their stories. With that being said, welcome, John.
Welcome. I'm
Thank you
glad
for
to
being
be
in the
here.
studio.
Thanks, Pat, for having me.
I really appreciate you being here and sharing your story.
It's honorable to be here with Dianne. I don't get to see
great
her
to
as
be here
often
with you,
as I'd
John.
like to.
Well, Dianne, I'd really like to say, I mean, now that we know that you're traveling, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do as the Executive Director for National C.O.P.S?
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Gosh, as the executive director, I'm trying to think how to even put that in words. I think about the business side of COPS, and I think that's really, what I focus on is making sure that we are able to host all of the programs that we host around the country year round, from the financial aspects, the fundraising, the actual programming, and then logistics is what we do. Is we move people all over the country to National Police Week. We're about to have about 6,500 survivors at National Police Week here in a couple weeks, and we're working on all those logistics to make sure that everybody gets there and has the honorable experience that they should have as they travel to honor their officer. There's a lot of things that go into COPS. There's the training side, which is what we're doing today, is training law enforcement officers if they have the unfortunate event, which they recently had in Louisiana, of a line of duty death. Here in the last week and a half, there's been 3 line of duty deaths in Louisiana. I think our timing here is actually, it came from somewhere that we're here at this time, and we brought a bunch of support services with us to help support those officers as they go through some of the darkest times of their careers, and the families that are also now on this journey with us that they never dreamt that they would be on. So that's what we're doing today. There's also a lot of things we do with kids and scholarships, and we provide counseling to children, and just putting all those pieces together is generally what I do on a daily basis.
And that's a challenge and a mouthful in itself to hear all that, because there's many different personalities. There are many crises that are different in each family in the loss of a loved one. And you have to, and your team has to be able to provide the adequate training and hopefully understanding to get them out of that position, let them know that they're still cared and loved for by people still in the uniform and that they're not abandoned. Can you give us a little history of when COPS started? How long ago, National COPS?
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually getting ready in the next year to come up on our 40th year anniversary of COPS. It started back in 1983 at an FOP event in DC, where 10 widows all came together and were at the event. And the police officers that were there that were hosting that event, they had 10 widows that came, and they weren't necessarily sure what to do with those widows when they were there. And so the widows all ended up at the same place. And Miss Susie Sawyer, who is the founder of COPS, ended up at that same location. And they all sat together and started talking about their losses. And they realized that they had so much in common. And after they talked to each other, they felt slightly better. And so they decided at that point to organize, and they created COPS. Their first conference in 1984 had 110 survivors at. And I think you just heard me say that we're going to have 6,500 this year in 2023 that are coming to Police Week. And we've just evolved from a very small mom and pop nonprofit into a very large nonprofit that's national. And we respond to every line of duty death in some way or another. So, and that's all because of those 10 widows that got together in that room that day. And they built the whole thing based on peer support. And people understand if you've been through something, you know how to talk to them, and you know what challenges they're going to face. And COPS is based on that. If we have a surviving spouse that's struggling, I'll match them up with another surviving spouse that has been there and has come out on the other end, mostly at least okay, and they can see hope in that. And that's a really powerful thing.
And I heard 55 chapters, or I read 55 chapters. I mean, from 10 widows to 55 chapters to providing education and training is a big undertaking, but also remarkable and honorable, especially as a retired police officer, being lucky to be able to get out of this profession, without losing my life or being injured to a point to where, you know, you wouldn't have quality of life. I'm very thankful for that. But I'm also so thankful as a law enforcement officer, a retired law enforcement officer, to know that there are people out there like you, Dianne, and the organization and the chapters that are out there. So could you tell our viewers the definition of a survivor and what that is? So many people misunderstand. I know that there's different levels and there's so many different understandings of it, but can you just like define for our viewers what a survivor is?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a lot of misconception about what a survivor is. There is a lot, when an officer dies in the line of duty, there is a ripple effect that happens, and it happens throughout a community. So the whole community will feel the loss of that officer. But specifically for COPS purposes, you know, a survivor is a family member of that officer, and we provide services to them all. So our survivors would be spouses, parents, the things that you would think of, the kids. But there's also siblings that are often forgotten. There's adult children, there's fiancés that are out there, there's non-traditional families where the officer may have been raised by their, you know, by their aunt and uncle that definitely have a parent relationship. So we do something for them as well. There's also like aunts and uncles and extended family. So it's basically any family member whose life was affected by that officer was after the loss, they feel that. But the other piece that we don't talk about very often is those other survivors that don't necessarily consider themselves survivors. So Pat, that's you and me. It's the coworkers of the fallen officers that are definitely affected by line of duty death. So I'm very proud of the fact that COPS also will support those coworkers as they go through that loss. As coworkers, we often, and understandably and really righteously so, focus on family members, and we want to take care of them in any way they can. When my friend Molly was killed, we would have done anything for her family, and we did. We did everything that we knew to do, but we never really thought about how affected we all were. And of course, that was in 2005, and the focus has changed somewhat over the years. But coworkers are definitely, their lives are altered forever when they lose a partner or a friend in the line of duty. And there's a lot of hurt out there because coworkers don't necessarily view themselves as survivors and don't realize that there's also services available for them as well.
And I think that that's amazing. And I think that what I wish and would pray for is that we could send that message out clearly to every agency in the United States or anywhere to let them know that, you know, obviously they all matter in the agencies where they lose a loved one and an officer. You know, you work with that person, whether it's one day or 100 years, they're a part of a family, they're a part of a tradition, they're also a part of, you know, a fraternity, as I would call it. And I think it's important that we get these messages out to other law enforcement. How is COPS, national COPS, reaching out to, you know, agencies, families? I know that you have a large membership, obviously for reasons that are sad, but so necessary. But how do you reach them all? How can we help reach them?
Well, I mean, John is sitting right here with us too, and I know John has been a big part of that in our chapters. So after a line of duty death, our chapters will reach out to the agencies. They'll reach out to those families. Each chapter does it a little bit differently. It may be immediately where they even respond to the hospital, or it could be their first contact is you know, at the funeral, where they may just slip a business card and say, I'm going to be calling you in a week or so when things have calmed down and everything is quiet. And as you said earlier, kind of the pomp and circumstance has died down. Then COPS will come in and start having those conversations with those families about, okay, what next? And so our chapters are a huge part of how we do that outreach. And we also reach out nationally to them. Every line of duty death will get, you know, a personal letter from myself and from National COPS, offering them every service that we provide, helping with filing for benefits, helping them navigate the family dynamics that they may have, how to connect themselves with other organizations that are out there that can help. And we do all that from the national level as well. But by the time we get to National Police Week every year, those families will that's when they really get to understand the full scope of what C.O.P.S does. They may see it very locally at their level, but when they get to Police Week, they will see all the chapters and all the survivors come together. And that's when they, I think, really realize that they're part of something much larger than even their community.
And before we go to a break and we pick up a little bit on some commentary from John, I wanted to say that the most unbelievable thing is watching the buses come in, Dianne, to see. I just can't believe there's that many people who lost somebody. The emotion is just so unbelievable to see young children walk off this bus, to be escorted through the sea of blue to seats that they really don't want to be in, but unfortunately they are, as it's respect for them, as their loved one's name will be read. But it's the most unbelievable thing to see that, the lines of buses coming up, people getting off. And I know, John, that for many, many years, your many hats that you wear, and before we go to this break, I just want to make this point, that I've watched you not be on the bus as a survivor. I've watched you carry people off the bus and escort them in. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. This is a short little break, and you'll hear more about what survivors are and what they mean to us all.
I'm Bob Hochgertel from Kings Road Brewing Company. I'm here to tell you about a brand new show on RVN television called Cooking with the King. Each week, we're going to taste and sample some of the best beers the Kings Road Brewing Company has to offer. And we're going to talk to area chefs and restaurant owners as we pair our beer with their signature dishes. We're going to teach you how to cook and eat like a king. Cheers.
What makes a Wawa Club? Is it the crispy bacon on the turkey BLT? The endless layers of flavor of the buffalo chicken salad? Or is it a secret handshake? Nah. At Wawa, there's a club for everyone. Find yours today.
We Ride for Those Who Died. The Police Unity Tour and RVN Television is bringing to you a show called On Your Honor, Straight Talk. And I'm your host, Patrick Montouri. I am a retired police chief from Florham Park, New Jersey, and I am also retired from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. I am currently, for the last 27 years, the CEO and founder of the Police Unity Tour. And this show will bring to you straight talk about law enforcement, the actions and heroism that is provided to you, the citizens of the United States, as well as their actions in falling in the line of duty, as we could see some of the stories that surround that. Again, please watch us on RVN Television and be safe. Take care.
At Jersey Mike's, they slice your order fresh, right in front of you. And let me tell you, watching that can send a rush of emotions through a person. Excitement, impatience, baby-like wonder, indecisive, anticipatory chewing, nervous pacing, happy claps, and finally, jealousy, because that's this guy's sub. I should order one. Good idea. Sliced right in front of you. It's a Jersey Mike's thing. A sub above.
What makes a Wawa Club? Is it the crispy bacon on the turkey BLT?
Welcome back, everyone. And as I said earlier, we have the opportunity to talk to our Executive Director for National C.O.P.S, Dianne Bernhard, and we're going to continue to do so. But I wanted to take a few moments to talk to a colleague, a friend for many, many years. And earlier, before the break, I talked to him about some of the selfish acts that he and Dianne and others make as they understand as being around a long time in this particular field. John, tell me, what is it like to be a survivor?
It's the club that you really don't want to belong to. You're kind of forced to join. It's not easy sometimes. Sometimes it's very easy when you're dealing with other people and not thinking of your own. But as I stated to Dianne when we spoke yesterday on the phone, I said I was around before C.O.P.S. When my dad was killed, there was no C.O.P.S. There was no National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, no county memorials, no state memorials. And what happens is, once the bagpipes stop, nobody kind of checks up on you. So Mom and I were left to fend for ourselves. Mom was smart enough to get together with some other young widows from the area. They started the Police and Firemen's Widows Association, went to Trenton in New Jersey, which is our state capital, to fight for benefits. And that was my beginning to learning what a survivor was. I didn't realize, what had happened because I was 8 months old when my dad was killed. I was born in July, he was killed in March. So I never really knew him. So growing up, I knew him only by the photos I had, that Mom had, from what his colleagues that worked with him told me about him, my family members, and that was about it. But cops kind of pulled me all together. It kind of made me almost whole again. It made me realize that I wasn't alone, and I would never be alone. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional.
It's okay, John.
It's tough to talk about Dad. As Pat said, I have a ritual ever since I went to that first names reading. Every time I go there, I go over and rub my hand on Dad's name. Sort of like a contact with him. It's not easy, but I found that helping others get through what Mom and I had to suffer through, because there were no benefits. She got, $100 a month from the city of Garfield, and that was her, thanks for your husband working for us. And I was laughing when Pat brought his motorcycle helmet here today, because that was a motor officer who was killed in the line of duty, ironically doing a funeral escort. And some guy decided he didn't want to be in that procession line with the funeral. He didn't belong there, and he pulled out and hit Dad on the bike. But Dad wasn't wearing that. And because of Dad and because of what the Unity Tour does and everybody else and what cops, we now have helmets for our cops. Dad died wearing his duty helmet, which is what they wore back then. Matter of fact, I have his badge on right now. I'm sure Pat's going to mention it anyway. This is the badge he was wearing the day he was killed. All dented up, but I wear it every year when I go to Police Week to honor Dad. I'm sorry, your turn.
Here's Ignacio Ciuppa. And as John, explains, it's so hard not to become emotional no matter how many years. So it goes to show you when someone says time heals, time may put positions between it or emotions on the back burner, but it never takes away the pain and what loss you've had. What I find to be so miraculous is that, through loss, John, people like you, and also Dianne, and all law enforcement officers tend to, make sure that they come in May. As you see, it got so big that we left the grounds of the memorial, which is rather tiny, to the mall area to where we could have 30 and 40,000 people. As we heard, there's 6,500 survivors that are going to be there.
And the best part is, during Police Week, is helping the other families. I mean, I'm the first one on the bus when they pull up to the Capitol grounds. Welcome there, telling them I'm a survivor. I know what they're going through. Because a lot of people talk about it, but don't experience it. And it breaks my heart when I see all those young kids, thinking back when I was like 8 months old and I didn't know any better, but, these poor kids are going to go through what I went through. So you try to help them along and make things a lot better for you or for them. And, hopefully I make a difference.
Well, obviously you are. I mean, there's.
And if I feel like this and didn't know my dad, what do these kids feel like? Mm-hmm. They grew up with their fathers or mothers. And then you have, people there, the significant others. You have mothers and fathers of the officer. You have sisters and brothers. It's quite a scene. If you've never been there, please try to make it down so you fully understand what goes on.
And John, you spend, most of your adult life volunteering as well.
Correct.
Volunteering to the organizations. You heard earlier on about his mom starting something when I was smiling, that, the tenacity, the ability to say that she won't give up. And she gave the same fight to John, God rest her. But, with that being said, I could say, as John being a member of the Police Unity Tour for the better part of 25 years, there's never been an opportunity I've ever seen you didn't want to be involved or to volunteer. But where I also saw that you did so much good was when I see you at the wall, and when the arrival comes, you're not just always caring about one person, you're caring about everybody. I see you go to survivors as they're going over to the wall to make sure that you could help them, tape something to the wall, or you would speak with them and talk to them about it or help them etch it, or you give a certain care that they understand and an emotion you bring there. And I don't want to say sort of like a grief counselor, because that wouldn't be right. I just think it's real, it's natural, it's human, and it's where some of our citizens don't get the opportunity, John, to see people like yourself. So I also want to bring you to the point of 1991, when you had the opportunity to hear your dad's name being read. Talk to me about that day. Talk to me about what your mom and, I know there was a trip and a half, but
It was. That was really the first day I had closure for myself. We got notified that Dad was being put on a wall, and I was like, "What wall are you talking about?" And we had no idea. I guess somebody in the city of Garfield, put Dad's name into the National Memorial to have his name put on a wall. So we got notified. Mom and I made the trip down, and we drove down. And they gave you a specific time. They said, well, your loved one's name will be read at a certain time. Boy, they weren't even close. I mean, they were so backed up. It was an unbelievable experience, just, being there and seeing that wall and realizing I'm not alone with this. Look at all these other people here. You don't realize that until you see everybody. And then you realize that, wow, there's a lot of other people that lost people too. And it's amazing every year when I go back to see the things that people bring to the wall, car doors, motorcycle helmets, motorcycle windshields. It's amazing the memorabilia that people bring there and leave there that, thank God, we keep and put it in a museum and eventually display it. I mean, our president of C.O.P.S, my chapter now, Lisa Pressler, her husband's light bar is signed by every officer that was on duty the day he had his accident. And it's sitting in the case in the museum, and it's been there for a while. And it's nice to know that people are going to remember. And that's what it's all about. I just want people to remember and to honor the people that served the states they're from. Dad gave his life for the city of Garfield, but for the state of New Jersey. And that's what you were doing when you were the chief.
Yeah.
And thank God you got out alive.
Yeah.
But that was the first day I actually felt closure. Besides going to the cemetery and stuff and seeing Dad's name there, but this gave me something that said, well, he'll be here forever. My grandkids, their grandkids, they'll be able to see it forever. So that was an important thing for me.
And it's, the emotion, and when someone would say, it's apparent, what people feel, and people would say, why do you go every year to Washington, D.C., do you ever think about not going? And
No.
the answer to that is no.
No.
And unfortunately, it conflicts with Mother's Day, it conflicts with all kinds of different holidays, and in the police world, promotions, and it still does not prevent people from making sure
Actually,
they come down there.
Mom was very good about it. I actually switched Mother's Day and Father's Day. I celebrated Mother's Day and Father's Day with her because the Mother's Day was always down there with Dad. So we kind of switched it up, and she was okay with it.
And Dianne, from having to deal, on a daily basis with survivors, this is, what you see as well about the connection to the wall. Could you give, from your perspective, what you think the survivors that you deal with on a regular basis, what the wall means to them, and why they come back, why they come, not just during May, why they bring family members there during the off season or not during our ceremonial aspects?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I wish I was there in studio with right now because I totally want to give John a big hug right now. John is what the wall is about. It's about exactly stories like his and the stories that are shared at those walls. During Police Week, there's definitely a reverence there. There's a feeling that there's a connection there, and many times it's because of people like John that are also there. That's where stories are shared. And If you could indulge me just a second, John, just because of your particular story, from our kids camp, every year we bring kids from across the country, and there's about 350 of us there. Surviving parent is there with them, and one of the little girls that went to that camp, they always bring a memory book of their parent that they lost, and she brought her picture, and in the picture it was a picture of her mom, who was obviously very pregnant, but there's no pictures of her with her dad, and she said, that's my very favorite picture of my dad, because I'm there in my mom's belly and with him. And so that was my picture with my dad. And when she sees people like you, John, that also grew up maybe not knowing or remembering their parent, that gives them hope to know that they're not also going to forget, because look at how far out you are, and you haven't forgotten. Still, your dad is a huge part of your life. And I think that represents what that wall is, what the whole experience is that hopeful of how you can connect. And that wall is so important for that. There's magic that happens there, not just during National Police Week, but during other times. I visit regularly, and every time I'm there, I'll see a family that is just sitting looking at the wall across from where their officer's name is inscribed. And always just sit down and introduce myself and say, tell me a little bit about your officer. And those are the moments of connection. So that's what that wall represents to survivors. It's the connection to their officer, a connection to other people, and it's a place they don't feel alone.
I tell you, as Pat, the first thing when I get to the wall, first thing I do is go over to Dad and sit on the little wall across and just sit there. Just like you said. That's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You can always tell a survivor.
I don't know if I answered your question, Pat, but I had to say
Yeah,
that.
you know what?
You
You said it better than I could actually, be able to express it. It's just there is beautiful story after connection, and the wall to me is so sacred in a sense. I don't want to sound so cliche or something just because it's our place. It's not federally funded. It's put there because of all of you citizens, all law enforcement, anyone who contributed to that wall. Thank you, to make it possible and a reality. It is the most important place because it shares independent stories for all that get the opportunity to visit. And what it does is it takes the 23,000 plus names that are on that wall, and they are no longer gone. They are present and accounted for and living. And in my heart, they're living. When I go there each year, someone would say, does it feel different? No. Looking at John in 2 seconds, I got a tear. Right away, Dianne wants to run through the TV and give him a hug because you understand that emotion and you feel that draw. And to John, I mean, the impact of, why you're here today and Diane's here today. And like I said, this is a 2-part series, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to see more to this story coming in May to take a look at it from such a personal point of view. This is the insider look of 2 individual heroes that give us the opportunity to see what they have gone through, their careers, and also what they have done thereafter. In doing so, I want to take the opportunity to take a small break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up with a few more questions if you would like to have a few more questions with me. And then, we'll close, and then we'll see each other very soon in May.
Yes, we will.
With that being said, let's go to our break.
A Wawa Club? Is it the crispy bacon on the turkey BLT? The endless layers of flavor of the buffalo chicken salad? Or is it a secret handshake? Nah, at Wawa, there's a club for everyone. Find yours today.
We Ride for Those Who Died. The Police Unity Tour and RVN Television is bringing to you a show called On Your Honor, Straight Talk. And I'm your host, Patrick Monturi. I am a retired police chief from Florham Park, New Jersey, and I am also retired from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. I am currently, for the last 27 years, the CEO and founder of the Police Unity Tour. And this show will bring to you straight talk about law enforcement, the actions and heroism that is provided to you, the citizens of the United States, as well as their actions in falling in the line of duty, as we could see some of the stories that surround that. Again, please watch us on RVN Television and be safe. Take care.
At Jersey Mike's, they slice your order fresh right in front of you. And let me tell you, watching that can send a rush of emotions through a person. Excitement, impatience, baby-like wonder, indecisive, anticipatory chewing, nerves pacing, happy claps, and finally, jealousy, because that's this guy's sub. I should order one. Good idea. Sliced right in front of you. It's a Jersey Mike's thing. A sub above.
Welcome back, everyone, and we're almost to the conclusion of our show, but before we do, I wanted to ask one more question of Dianne. Dianne, where to next? I know you're always traveling and you're out there doing a conference and doing good for all of us, but where to next?
Yeah, so we have just one more training coming up in Salt Lake City in a couple weeks, and then it's Everything National Police Week. We're going to see all of you in DC, and literally can't wait to see all the months' work all come together and to get all those families together to honor their officers.
Dianne, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And I, like I said to you in Washington, just please know you matter, because for all of us, it makes it very, very clear that what you do is from your heart. So we really appreciate you, and just know that we all know that you matter. And same thing for you, John. And I'll tell you right now, your dad, Ignacio, is looking down at us all, very proud of his son, knowing that not only did he keep the legacy and honor of the Thin Blue Line, but he passed it forward not only generationally, but to his own son. I'm proud to see and ride along next to your son in the Police Unity Tour, John, and I am so honored to be your friend and colleague to both of you. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see you in Washington, D.C. very soon. But as we close, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you our closing theme song, sung by Alita Montori, Fighting for Me, written by Riley Clemens, and we will see a few video clips and some pictures with that. We also want to say thank you to our sponsors, the Police Unity Tour, for being so gracious and allowing us to have this particular program to share with you the content and the events of heroes like the ones we had on today. Remember to take care of each other when you're out there. Absolutely. And for you retired law enforcement officers, don't be so retired. Get involved. Be a part of these active law enforcement officers and be a part of the future for them. Remember to stay blue. We ride for those who died. God bless you all. I'll see you in May on part 2 of this show. So thank you so much for viewing. And it is On Your Honor, Straight Talk.
I need the kind of love that can outlast this life. I need the kind of love that is willing to fight when the going gets tough and my strength's not enough. I see you showing up like never before. This battle for my heart you took on from the start. You are the peace when my mind's at war. And no, you will never stop fighting for me when I can't fight for myself. Every word is a promise you keep, 'cause you love me like nobody else. You stand up for me in the darkest night when my faith is weak. You're still by my side. You will never stop fighting for me. You will never stop fighting. In the perfect timing, you make all things right. You paint a silver lining in this heart of mine. When the going gets tough and my strength's not enough, I see you showing up like never before. This battle for my heart